Good afternoon and welcome everyone to our live webinar series, Organizing Your B.A.I.L. We will get started here momentarily. Thank you all for joining. Today, we have a discussion with our principal of the Law Office of Beverly Winstead, Ms. Beverly Winstead, who will bring us a great presentation this afternoon. We will give a few minutes for a few folks to join the session and get started here momentarily. But welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. Good afternoon and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining our live webinar series, Organizing Your B.A.I.L. We're happy that you all could join us this afternoon for this great conversation with Ms. Beverly Winstead. We're looking forward to your active participation this afternoon and a great presentation. We will get started here momentarily. We'll let a few more folks get seated and into the room, the virtual room. Thank you for being here. Good afternoon and welcome everyone to our live webinar series, Organizing Your B.A.I.L. So very happy that so many of you have been able to join us. We've had a great series and we're looking forward to the presentation by Ms. Beverly Winstead. Thank you for being here. Again, welcome everyone to week 5, our last and final week of the Capital Readiness programs, Organizing Your B.A.I.L webinar series. My name is Sonya Bigelow-Smith, and I'm the director of the Capital Readiness Program, a 4-year initiative to empower small business growth and improve the capital readiness of small businesses. On behalf of our president and CEO, Sharon Pender, we extend a special greeting for your attendance today. You all might not know that CRMSDC provides a host of resources. For example, we provide National Minority Business Certification for private sector, contracting, matchmaking opportunities with many of our corporate members, and government contracting business development coaching by way of our Virginia MBDA Business Center located in Fairfax, Virginia. To learn more, visit our website at www.crmsdc.org. Now, once again, I hope you all have your brown bag, lunch, a beverage, or a snack with you as we get ready for an engaging conversation. Organizing Your B.A.I.L has been designed very intentionally to expose and reinforce the importance of having these professionals on your team. A banker, an accountant, an insurance agent, investors and funding options, and a lawyer. In fact, having a small business attorney can provide invaluable guidance and protection, helping with business formation, and can help prevent costly legal problems over the long run. Before we kick it off, let me start with a few housekeeping items. This session is being recorded and will be available to you within 24 to 48 hours. My teammate, Amanda Bill, our program coordinator, is standing by monitoring the chat today and will monitor the Q&A chat box at the bottom of your screen. Say hello to Amanda in the chat and tell her where you're dialing in from. Thank you. So let's get started and let me introduce you to our moderator today, Ms. Maria Randall. Maria is the president and CEO of LLADNAR Services, a consulting firm partnering with the Capital Readiness Program this year, specializing in assisting small businesses shore up their financials as they prepare to seek capital. With her years of experience as a banker, I am sure you all know that she has seen dozens of financial projections and loan packets, and is the very best person we could have to help today moderate this session. Welcome, Maria. How are you today?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm doing well and welcome everyone. I'm glad you're all here. I'm glad we're doing this. Sonia, we're at the fifth one.
Oh, exactly. We certainly are. We've had some great engagement and participation. So thank you for being here. Maria, I'm going to turn the virtual room over to you now, as I normally do. But before we transition to Beverly's presentation, share a little bit about yourself and what inspired your journey.
Sure, sure. Thank you. Thank you, Sonia. I am the CEO and founder of LLADNAR Services, and we're a small business advisory and consulting firm that I founded after about 25 years as being a small business lender. Most of that time doing SBA loans for businesses here in our area and around the country. And I decided to sort of take my inside information as a lender, my understanding of the loan process and my connections with other lenders and lending institutions around the country to use that to help small businesses, entrepreneurs who are interested in seeking financing for their business. So, from pre qualification to determining the right loan type to matching them up with the appropriate lender. Just want to use what I've amassed over the years to help folks in their journey and help them navigate that small business lending journey, which can sometimes, be a little bit involved. So I'm so glad to be here, and I'm so glad that we are doing this workshop series. I am so excited about today too. I think
Yeah.
it's gonna be
Well,
great.
thank you, Maria. I can say you've been in partnership with the Capital Readiness Program, really working with a host of our clients as they prepare their financial projections or need assistance with that. And I can tell you, after so many of those sessions, many of our business owners have come back and felt better prepared to get in front of a lender,
Right.
a banker, to really have those strong conversations about the money that they're seeking to grow their business. So we certainly appreciate all the work that you're doing with our clients, your hands-on support and assistance. And thank you again for being a part of this series to really kind of further assist our small business owners with the support that they need, because we certainly want to make sure that they're ready to grow and scale as they set their goals.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Sonia. That's great feedback. And yeah, I mean, with the mission of the Capital Readiness Program, to help empower small businesses to get access to these funds that are there, we have to do everything we can to help them. And that's why this series is perfect for that as well. So,
Well, great. Well, thank you so much again. And I'm going to turn the virtual room over to you. I know we've got a special guest,
yeah.
Miss Beverly Winstead. So I'll turn the virtual room over to you to introduce her. And I'll
Okay.
see you in a few.
See you in a few.
All
No,
right.
that sounds great. And as Sonia said, I mean, this series, having your bail team, it's just so important for business owners because they really can help you navigate the intricacies of operating a business, right? From different financial decisions and certainly to legal protections, legal considerations that you need to have in mind. So it is my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker today, Attorney Beverly Winstead, whom I had the pleasure of meeting over 10 years ago. It really has been that long. It's been over 10 years. I can't remember exactly. But I've had the pleasure of witnessing not just the growth of her business, of her law practice, but her impact on the community. Beverly is the managing attorney at the law office of Beverly Winstead, LLC, here in Maryland, where they represent businesses and individuals with both federal and tax disputes, state tax disputes, excuse me. Some of the many leadership roles, goodness, in which Beverly has served include chair of the Maryland Bar Association tax section, chair of the National Bar Association tax section, law professor, clinic director at the Low Income Tax Clinic at the University of Maryland Carey School of Law. We would really run out of time if I try to mention her leadership as a college basketball star or her work with nonprofit organizations. So instead, I'll just turn it over to Beverly so that she can tell us more about her journey and share some really vital information for business owners. So, Beverly.
Okay, it says I'm disabled. I have to be enabled by the host.
Okay, we'll see if Amanda can help that. There you go. There you are. Hi, Beverly.
Hey, how are you?
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much for being here, my friend. Looking forward to, well, so good to see you anyway, but so looking forward to hear everything you're going to share with everyone today.
Yeah. Everybody wants to know how in the world Maria and the Capital Readiness Program got a tax attorney to show
What?
up to
In
a
April.
presentation on
Tell them
April
why.
2nd.
Tell them why, Beverly.
But Maria is my friend, guys. Like I said, we met 10 years ago. And I think what cemented our relationship was when we were in New York and we both were going to the All-Star game and we were standing in line together. And I was like, hey, I know you. She's like, I know you. I said, yeah, we just had dinner like a month ago or so.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then we both made the trip up to catch the All-Star game in New York, right?
Yeah. So, I love basketball. So anybody that's a fan of basketball is
There you
definitely
go.
a friend of mine. So.
Thank you, Beverly. Thanks so much for being here. And I know your presentation is great. Please share your journey and take us through what you want to share with the folks today. Can't wait.
Okay, yeah. So are you familiar with Simon Sinek and his book called Why? Start with Why. So
Mm.
any presentation that I do, I always start with why. Why do we do this presentation? Why do we show up? We show up because it is important for small business owners to have that support system and those legal people in place so that they can protect, grow, and sustain their business, right? And so ever since I was probably a kid, I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And so, it's interesting. People always say, why are you still in this space? Why are you still in this? You've been presented with a lot of different opportunities, but I really do have a passion for entrepreneurship and I have a passion for small businesses too.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Beverly. I'll jump off camera and let you get to it.
Okay, so you've already met me. I think probably the most important thing people want to know is that I was a former basketball player, and those skills that I learned on the court, I also use it a lot when I am, fighting for clients against the IRS. So my opening statement is going to be legal issues can arise at any stage of your business journey. Having an attorney isn't just about solving problems, it is about preventing them. The purpose of this presentation is to explain how an attorney can be a proactive partner in a small business success, in a small business's success. And we're going to discuss key areas where legal support is essential. So going back to the opening statement, a lot of times the conversations I have with clients when they come to me, trying to figure out whether or not they want to have a strategy session in the beginning or they just kind of want to go out on their own and just, start their businesses. I said, hey, it's a lot cheaper to come see me in the very beginning than for me to be working through a tax problem with you, right? So I think let's debunk some of these myths too. We're going to talk about some of the myths. Sorry, I'm turning to the side. I probably should have put this on the the main screen, but this is my secondary screen, guys. So if I'm not completely looking at the cameras, because I'm looking at my secondary screen. All right. So why small businesses need legal support? Many believe that, here's a myth, many believe attorneys are only for big corporations, and it's probably because of the price tag attached to it. You feel like that a lot of times it just costs a lot to have an attorney. And what I say is, again, it goes back to sometimes it costs you even more when you don't get, you know, that attorney involved from the beginning. So you want to be proactive versus reactive. There's a quote that I like: an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? And so that just basically goes back to getting out in front of things is going to be a lot more efficient. I don't want to say cheaper, but a lot more efficient than trying to untangle, you know, problems when they arrive. All right, so here are key roles that attorneys can play in small businesses. I really like this slide because I was at a conference one time, and oops, sorry. It was a person there that was talking to me about marketing, and I really didn't understand how she would actually help my business. Like, people were saying, you need to go talk to her, you need to go talk to her. And she has some kind of like, I think CRM system, and, you know, but it really didn't help me to know what she did without understanding how it fits into my business, right? So when you're talking about an attorney, a lot of times you're like, oh, an attorney, you know, they cost a lot of money and I'm not sure how they would fit into my business. But these are all the roles a lot of times small business attorneys actually play. So we certainly can help with business formation and structure. We can help with contract and agreements. Employment law as you're hiring or even trying to determine when to hire people. That's something we can help with. Intellectual property protection. That's something we can help with. Tax and regulatory compliance. And then dispute resolution and litigation. So when we think about this, and I'm gonna go through each one of these, I want you to think about, is that an area where in your business you feel like might be a pain point? And then perhaps we can figure out a way to bring an attorney on board in a cost-effective manner for your business, right? All right, business formation. This is a lot of times when people come see me because they're trying to figure out what is going to be the best structure for them to mitigate taxes, right? To reduce their tax burden. So I often advise, and my team, not just me, my team, my firm, we advise people on selecting the right entity. Should you just be a sole proprietor? Should you be an LLC, an S Corp, a C Corp? Depending on the kind of business that you have, depending on what your revenues are, then we can typically, and your exit strategy too. What is your exit strategy? We typically can have a strategy session with you and iron out what is going to be the correct or the most advantageous business structure for you. All right. We also help with drafting and filing the necessary paperwork. I mean, a lot of people just go down to, if you're in Maryland or DC or even Virginia, you know, you guys a lot of times will go ahead and just file the paperwork yourself. It's not as complex as what it used to be to file the paperwork, but sometimes even when you file the paperwork yourself, you might be missing steps, right? So even just having a strategy session with an attorney to figure out and to make sure that all the steps are taken when you set up your business is very essential. So for instance, I was on a call with a client yesterday and they had the name of the business. They got the EIN from IRS, but they actually never filed the paperwork with the state. And so I'm like, okay, well, how are you? Are you a single member LLC? Are you a partnership? You know, so it was things that I was able to talk to this particular person about to help them make sure that they're later down the road, kind of don't get in trouble. So, and then the other thing is we're, of course, ensuring legal compliance from day one. We have people that set up in Wyoming or Delaware, but they also don't understand that they might have a filing requirement to be a foreign corporation in Maryland, in DC, or in Virginia, right? Because of the amount of work that they're doing here in this area. So we take a look and we say, hey, you also have a requirement to do this. So you definitely want to be mindful of that, even if you set up your own business. Contracts and agreements. This is going to be an area where when you are, no matter where you are in your business cycle, right? Whether you are in the startup phase, whether you're in the growth phase, or whether you are in the exiting / succession phase of your business, right? You're probably always going to have contracts that need to be reviewed. You're going to have agreements that need to be reviewed, and what attorneys can do, or not even reviewed, but even in some instances, it might need to be drafted, right? And so what an attorney can do is draft clear, enforceable contracts for you. Read the language of the contract to make sure you understand what you're signing up for. And then we also can mitigate risks through legal safeguards. So I'll just give you a few, I think, some of the things that I do for clients, typically that either are on a monthly retainer with me or small business owners, or sometimes we get clients that are coming in the startup phase, right? And they have a contract that they want reviewed. So a good example of some of the stuff, it could be lease agreements. Like if you're going out trying to rent some space, you might want us to review the lease agreement. Vendor contracts are really big a lot of times that we end up reviewing. I'll give you a really good example. And I'm a storyteller, so you're going to hear a lot of stories in this, Maria. Okay.
That'll be great. That'll be great. I was going to ask you a question, but you may answer it in your story. So go ahead.
Yeah. So I had a client that booked a strategy session. They were thinking about starting a franchise business, buying a franchise business, and I think it was like a smoothie business. And they sent me over the contract, and I read the contract, and I said, hey, got back on a call with them. Do you realize that this is not really an agreement for a franchise, but it's more so as part of the franchise agreement, they're asking you to sign this mentor-mentee relationship. And they want, in the term of the agreement, it said that the mentor would get in perpetuity, a percentage of the gross sales, right? And when I jumped back on the call, I said, are you aware that this is what the contract says? And you need to think about whether or not, if you do not have positive income for that month, like if you're in the hole, if you are bleeding money, you still are required to give that mentor a portion of the gross sales, not the net sales. Like I can see the net sales, hey, I can see the net sales, yeah. But the gross sales, I said, are you going to be able to do that, right? And then number two, when you terminate this agreement, this contract says you still have to go ahead and pay this mentor in perpetuity as long as this business is still operating. And they said, oh, wow, I didn't know that's what the contract said. I said, I'm not saying that it's necessarily bad, even though I thought it was bad, but I want you to be aware that this is what is in this contract, right? From there, they made a decision as to how they were going to proceed, right? They had more information.
And see, you did answer my question, because I started to in reading this particular slide, and I thought about on the earlier slide where you said a lot of times people think engaging an attorney is for a larger business, because of the price tag typically. And I was going to say, well, is there a certain dollar amount of contract value above which, you need to engage an attorney? But then you just gave that example of just the franchise agreement, or just so. I mean, it seems like any amount, it's a matter of having an attorney go through and, see what you don't see as that small.
Right. Right. And the reason why this is important, like, and I really pay attention to numbers because I'm a tax attorney and I deal with businesses all the time and they can't pay IRS, or they can't pay the state. And when I go through and do like the financials and stuff that have to be sent over to IRS, I'm questioning like, why is this expense so high? Like, and then you actually get into it's because they're locked into a contract that they can't get out of, And so not only do they have, it has so many reciprocal effects when you have a really bad term in a contract, right? Because then you can't pay IRS, and that's a whole another whole, what you call it, rabbit hole of problems that you'll be involved with. Employment law. So another big area is, I think from the tax perspective is, well, just making sure you have good employee contracts, handbooks, hiring and termination procedures, staying compliant with labor laws. And so we don't do actually employment law here, but we do have, I would say, partner firms that if an employment issue arises, we typically will reach out and, work with them to be able to make sure that the employer is, I think, safeguarded against doing something that is illegal, right? Particularly when it comes to employment, because people are quick to sue in this whole employment space. So you want to make sure that you're definitely covered. A lot of times, I think the second way people come to us with employment law is really worker classification issues, right? So even though you might have a contract with someone to be an independent contractor, do they actually meet the requirements that the IRS or the state actually has a more rigid test than IRS when it comes to how you classify workers? Should they be an employee or should they really be an independent contractor, right? So we do advising on that. And that's some of the things that you also, as a small business owner, you want to be mindful of that employment issues can arise, because if you pay somebody as an independent contractor and then later, let's say you terminate them and then they go down and file for unemployment, or they file their tax returns and they end up owing taxes, then that's how a lot of times that's what can trigger an employment tax audit. And so either the state is coming out looking at you to see whether or not you correctly classified them, or you're going to get a notice from IRS in terms of, hey, this person is saying that they actually was an employee, but you have them classified as an independent contractor, right? So those are some of the things that you want to be mindful of as a small business attorney. As a small business owner. Intellectual property protection. This is really big for a lot of clients that have goods. I would say goods, some services, because you might want to protect your brand, but trademark, patents, copyrights, anything that actually has some value, that is like creative works, right? We talk about, I think in this space, who actually owns the creation, right? So, and a IP attorney could actually help you if you think you have some kind of creative work to make sure that your intellectual property is protected, right? Another thing that you might want to do with an attorney in this space would be, if you have something that is creative or you want some kind of trade secrets, is helping you with NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, right? In some instances, you might even want to do a no compete clause. So this is stuff that a small business attorney can also advise you on. All right, tax and regulatory compliance. Obviously, this is my wheelhouse. I do a ton of advising in this space, and I will say for business owners, this is one area where you absolutely want to make sure that you are following the rules, so to speak. So tax, depending on like what kind of business you are, goes back to like the entity formation, that kind of stuff. The LLC, S Corp, C Corp, you know, everybody has tax filing requirements. So attorney can help you, and an accountant a lot of times, with understanding your compliance requirements. There's also, in a lot of instances, industry specific regulations. And so a really big area I think we often advise in has to do maybe with certain industries that might have a sales and use tax requirement, right? Because if you have a sales, depending on the industry, like who knew that cleaning companies, at least in Maryland, would have to collect sales tax, right? And so when early on in my career, I had to, I handled a lot of audits where the state of Maryland audited janitorial companies that did not collect sales tax. And when you don't collect it, guess what? You're still responsible, right? And so over the last 10 years, I've seen evolution of the sales and use tax area still evolving. There's always constant legislation, and if you know anything about Maryland this past, I would say maybe a month ago, they keep trying to present this bill to the General Assembly to close the tax gap uh for Maryland by having like people like me, like attorneys, collect sales tax, right? But that's something that has not passed. I don't think it's going to pass because, you know, us attorneys are going to be in an uproar if we have to now charge legal fees as well as sales and use tax. Like, that's crazy. But the industry specific regulations, right? So you want to make sure that in your industry you understand what your compliance requirements are. And the other thing about sales and use tax, even if your industry requires it, if you have nexus with certain states, right? Certain states require you also to collect and remit sales tax, right? So you want to be mindful that you might have a requirement to collect that. Also, I mentioned earlier about registering as a foreign corporation, right, in certain jurisdictions, if you're operating there, or foreign business, even if you're set up somewhere else. You want to make sure that you're complying with the law. The other thing is staying audit ready, right? So part of compliance is making sure that you have your ducks in order and in a row so that if you ever get audited, you will have the documentation to make sure that there are no adjustments, right? And this also goes back to the work classification issue, right? So when you talk about staying audit ready, a good way just in that worker classification space, you would have a copy of your independent contractor agreement. If, let's just say that you classify this person as an independent contractor, not an employee. So you want to have a copy of that agreement ready. You want to have copies of the invoices, because it can't be, if you classify somebody as a independent contractor, right, they're not going to submit timesheets. So you need to have copies of the invoices ready, right? You also need to show or have some log that shows that you actually didn't direct this person to, when I say direct, it basically you didn't tell them what to do, right? They were able to perform their job and just come back and report to you in terms of they fulfilled the project specific requirements that you hired them to do. So these are all things that you would basically put in your audit trail for compliance purposes.
Beverly, let me jump in with a question here real quick. So for W-2 employees that the business owner may have, what kind of things would they need to show to stay audit ready? Does everyone need to have an employment contract for their W-2 employees?
I would say absolutely. You want to have an employee be in contract. You want to have an offer letter. You want to have a timesheets, right? Timesheets. they should be paid consistently. Like you're gonna have to pull records showing that they were paid, either if they were paid bi-weekly, they were consistently paid bi-weekly, or if they were on a monthly schedule or weekly schedule, you wanna have those records ready. And if you are using a third-party vendor like ADP or QuickBooks, or, you want to make sure that you pull those records and keep them outside of those third-party vendor sites. Because if in fact you no longer are on contract with ADP or Paychex or Gusto or FreshBooks, all those, you're not going to be able to access those records when IRS comes knocking on your door, or when the state of Maryland or Virginia or DC. So you always should pull those records and put them in another file, another drive somewhere.
Such a good point, because imagine how difficult it would be to get them if you're no longer there using their service.
It's very difficult. Trust me, I know. It's very
Wow.
difficult.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and that's one of the issues that small businesses come into a lot, because they might start off using a payroll company, a payroll provider, and then they may not have the cash flow to continue with the payroll provider. And the payroll provider will cut your services off, right? And then you'll no longer have really have access to being able to retrieve your documents.
Wow. Good
Yeah.
point.
Okay, another thing, this is where I think most small business owners, they kind of feel like this is the area where they need to engage an attorney, right? Whenever there's a dispute and now it's possible litigation. So I would say you probably are thinking about that a little backwards, right? Because in terms of attorneys don't just always just deal with disputes, resolving disputes and litigation. But if there is a dispute that arises and litigation is required, then absolutely, it's good to be able to have an attorney that will help you with this area, this key role, right? So handling conflicts with clients, partners, because conflicts are going to arise, right? And so sometimes it gets out of hand. Hopefully, I wish all small business owners that they'll be able to really handle the conflict, without it getting to an attorney stage, but sometimes that's not the case. So just know that we're available to do that. Some attorneys are actually licensed mediators, right? And then there's also options for arbitration when they also can tell you when court action is necessary. I'm laughing and I'm smiling because a lot of times when people draft their own contract, right, they'll have a clause, maybe they pulled off the internet or something, where it says, oh, arbitration, if a dispute arises, we'll do arbitration. But a lot of times people don't understand arbitration is very, very expensive, right? So, you want to be mindful even with the contracts that you have a vendor to sign, that is really something maybe realistically that can be done, right? And so one of the key things I always look at also in a contract is the jurisdiction. Because when you sign contracts, if something happens, you want to be able to bring it in the jurisdiction that's going to be the easiest for you, right? So any contract that says the dispute has to be settled in Wisconsin or Wyoming or something, I had that conversation with my client, like, are you willing to go to Wisconsin or Wyoming? Because I can't go there. I'm not licensed there, so I couldn't represent you. You're gonna have to reach out to another attorney somewhere out in the, what you call it? Is that the Midwest? No, that's not the Midwest. West Coast, somewhere. Actually, Wyoming might be in the Midwest.
I can't help you there. I think it's Midwest. I'm bad at geography, but we get what you mean.
Yeah, those are one of those states I haven't been to. I travel a lot. Maria knows I travel a lot, but I some states I was like, oh, okay, if I have a conference there, I'll go. But other than that, it's just not on my list. All right. Okay, so goes back to when to consult an attorney. So when you're thinking about your own business, right, and you're thinking about your growth strategy, your pain points, or how you're going to protect it, how you're going to sustain it, you know, how you're going to grow it. These are all the cycles of when you can consult an attorney. You can do at startup. Like I said, we help with entity formation, licenses, tax advising, IP protection. During growth, contract negotiation, IP protection, tax advising. When you're facing challenges, a lot of times I'm in that space where people are coming to see me because they're facing challenges, mostly tax challenges, disputes with the IRS, with the comptroller's office, and then also planning for the future, succession, mergers, and acquisitions. So if you are in any phase of that, these 4 areas of your business, you absolutely can consult an attorney, right? And I think everybody is in these phases of your business, right? All right, I'm gonna give you a real world example of what happened. This business actually was kind of like in their startup, or they were actually in a growth phase. So AB LLC started a company selling online goods during COVID. They filed the paperwork with the state themselves. They did not prepare a written operating agreement. Member A was responsible for business development. Member B was responsible for day-to-day operations. AB LLC in its first year generated net profit of $50,000. There were no problems in year 1. In year 2, AB LLC generated $400,000 in net profit. It was then that A said she should get 80% of the $400,000 as salary, since she is the one that generated the business. B said that my understanding is that we were 50-50 partners, and therefore the profit should be split 50-50. They originally contacted me for tax planning services, but it was during the tax planning services that I became aware of the disagreement about the earnings. So let's go to the chat. What was one of the first things they did wrong? Let's go to the chat. Maria, is anybody gonna chat with me today? What was one of the first things they did wrong?
Yeah, I think some people will put something in the chat to answer that question. Let's see.
Or anything that they did wrong in this whole situation. Not just the first thing, but anything that they did wrong. What were some of the things that they could have done better? Let me just say that, could have done better.
Well, you mentioned initially no operating agreement, so that's a
No
start.
operating agreement. This is why I tell people, get it straight on the front end, right? Get it straight before any business activity has taken place. You know, a lot of times people think that when bad things happen to the business, that's when the arguments arise. But in this instance, something great happened to the business, and there was an argument that arose, right? So you want to have an operating agreement. Another thing that they probably did wrong is that they didn't seek the advice of an attorney from the very beginning,
Someone
right?
put that in the chat. That's right.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
didn't get it reviewed by an attorney from the beginning.
Yeah, they set up the business on their own, which was, you know, okay. But the thing is, again, I'm just dealing with the tax planning services, but the question is, were they correctly structured? You know, did they have a requirement to have a sales and use tax license?
Mm, wow.
What jurisdictions did, because they're selling online goods now, right? So other jurisdictions, if you have nexus, and nexus is defined in various ways depending on the state, right? Where you have sales. So did you have a requirement to also have a sales and use tax license in other jurisdictions outside of, let's say, just the DMV in this area, outside of Maryland? All right. And so these are some of the things that I saw from the outset. And in the very beginning, I shifted my hat once I became aware of the disagreement, and I tried to serve as a mediator. It did not work. It did not work. So they ended up actually at that time having to each go get a attorney to litigate. They ended up litigating the matter, you know. So when you talk about the money that they could have paid just for maybe a 1 or 2 hour strategy consult, let's just say 1 hour for a strategy consult for $400, $500, something like that. Then to review the operating agreement, $500 maybe. And actually, or to draft it, maybe about $1,500. So it probably would have been less than $5,000 to do all that stuff. Now, both of them have to actually hire attorneys. Litigation is expensive. So you're definitely looking at about $20,000 for both of them. Probably about $40,000. When it probably could have been done in the beginning for between 5 and 10.
Wow. This is a great example to really illustrate that point.
Yeah.
Goodness. Ooh.
All right, cost considerations. So I think, I mean, cost is absolutely a factor when you're a small business. I like to think of it as not necessarily cost, but what is the investment, right? What is the investment you're going to make in your business, right? So some people, depending on what the issue is, it could be a retainer. A retainer is something that can be structured a couple of different ways. If you have one problem, like let's say somebody comes to me with an IRS problem, right? In the beginning, I'm going to say, hey, this is probably how much it's going to cost. And let me just get a retainer and then I'll bill out against the retainer. And then if I need additional funds, I'll ask for an additional deposit. If in fact I don't use your whole retainer, then I'm gonna return it to you. So a retainer just means that, hey, we're gonna hold the stuff in escrow for you. And then we're gonna use it to work to perform services for you. So hourly, some attorneys bill hourly, where they may not get a retainer up front, depending on the relationship with the client. They may just say, hey, I'm just going to bill you out hourly, and then you pay in the end. I think that's less common. So I think probably if I'm working on a tax return, I will bill out hourly depending on the complexity of the return. Some of my returns are actually flat fees. But a lot of times, if it's a real complex return, I'm definitely just going to bill out hourly. And then when I get done with the tax return, then, I'll send you the bill. Other clients we have on like monthly retainer. That's another thing. Let me go back to the retainer, where you get a certain amount of hours because people want to build it into their budget, right? They want to be able to always to access an attorney as issues arise. So if you're, and we're very selective when it comes down to whether or not we're deciding to put a client on counsel, because it really has to do with, I think, if you are in that stage of your business where we feel that you really, really, really have a lot of moving pieces, and we want to be able to, when you want to have a conversation with us, we want to stop whatever we're doing because we know you're on monthly retainer and make sure that your needs are served, right? That's not every business owner. Some business owners aren't at that stage where they need a attorney like ongoing monthly. Sometimes it's just like sporadic issues that arise, right? Where all of a sudden you got a notice from IRS and you want to, have a strategy session on how to, deal with or how to respond, right? So those are the things. And then of course you have project-based fees. I think I've seen project-based fees more so, let's say with maybe intellectual property attorneys, where if they are trying to get a trademark for you or something copywritten, they typically might do just a project-based, for that. And then again, planning your legal budget. If you're working with an accountant, a CPA, they can help you actually build in your budget, your fees for your attorney, right? And I know you had a CPA here earlier, maybe about 3 weeks ago. And you tell them, look, I want to build in a budget for an attorney because I want to have on my team everybody that the capital readiness program says that I need to have, right? And so a lot of times we find out once you do the budget that you're actually undercharging for your services, right? And then once you increase your, let's say your prices, and you can justify, and at least in your mind, that hey, this is why I need to charge this. This is why I need to, bill out at this rate, or charge this for my goods, my services. And then again, I say investing in legal advice now saves money later. And I just gave you, I feel like, a really good example of why if you invest now, it helps to save money later. Two great examples, because the franchise person, I was like, oh my God, do not get locked into this contract. No, don't sign it.
Yeah, that was another great example. Thank you, Beverly. And I think we're at the time for questions, right? And I know that there've been quite a few that have been accumulating in the Q&A section. Ready for some questions from the attendees, Beverly?
Sure. That's my next slide.
There you go. All right. Well, Amanda, we'll have you take it away to share with the what's in the Q&A box there, please.
Awesome. Thank you. Jaquette is wondering, if we already have an accountant, do we need a tax attorney, or does it matter what the attorneys specialize in?
I mean, that's actually a really great question. I am unique because I know taxes and I know accounting, a little bit of accounting. But I will say it depends. It goes back to where you are in the cycle of your business. And then it also goes back to what key role, when you think about what role an attorney can play in your business, and where you are in your cycle. And if any of those key roles are something that you say, look, I really can grow my business if I had more advice in this area, or this is really a pain point for me, I need to get help with this, then absolutely, I would say you should consider an attorney.
Awesome. Thank you. Kenny would like to know, what are the potential tax implications of hiring independent contractors versus employees?
Yep. So employees, you have to remit, you have to collect and remit their FICA taxes and their federal taxes and their state taxes. And a lot of people, sometimes when they have cash, a lot of small business owners, when they have cash flow issues, they fail to do that because they're going to use that money to take care of their basic needs. It's funny, Maria, because when I'm watching reality TV, I can tell always the small business owners that have tax problems, because
Watching reality TV.
yes, if they hadn't paid the rent, they hadn't paid taxes. I can tell you that. Okay. If they hadn't paid the vendors, particularly in a restaurant, they hadn't paid taxes. So I'm like, oh, he got a tax problem. And then later on down, like a year later, it'll come out that this person has tax problem.
There you
Because
go.
people tend to pay who is directly in front of them first. And it takes IRS and the state a year or 2 or 3 in some instances to actually catch up with you. But when they catch up with you, they will put that hammer down, right? And so going back to the question of independent contractor versus the employees. So independent contractors, if they charge you, if you say I'm gonna pay you $1,000 a month, that's what you pay them, $1,000 a month. No taxes are withheld. They are responsible for the taxes.
Awesome. Thank you. Sherry would like to know, on the subject of intellectual property, does this area cover legal support of trademark infringement?
So I have a really good colleague who does IP law. And yes, I know that she has sued some highly prominent people for trademark infringement. And she also has defended her clients on trademark infringement, and she's phenomenal. If you want her information, then I can give it to you too.
Thank you for that. Janelle would like to know, if I hire my daughter, do I need to contract if she does not work on regular basis?
So that is really a loaded question. I would say it depends. I can't really answer it without knowing all the facts. And you probably want to talk, if you have an accountant or CPA, you probably want to talk to them. I will say that I'm a huge advocate that of people that have small businesses, of hiring their kids, because it is one of those things that can build generational wealth, right? And so you want to make sure you're doing it correctly. There are nuances in the law, depending on how you're set up. If you're an S Corp or a C Corp, or a LLC. LLCs, you don't have to pay like the FUTA taxes or the FICA taxes when you hire your child, right? Under 18. If you're S Corp, C Corp, no, C Corp, I think you, S Corp, you escape the FUTA, but not the FICA. C Corp, you still have to pay it all, but there's certain reasons why you might want to set up your business a certain way if you think a lot of your employees might be your children. So that's why I say it's a very long answer and fact specific.
Understood. Thank you. So for our last question, Kenny would like to know, how do I ensure that my contracts, licenses, and permits are legally sound and up to date?
I would say you probably should be working regularly with an attorney that's going to review your stuff. I mean, that's really, if you're trying to figure that out, I mean, you could do your research yourself, but I always tell people, you know, do what do what you are really good at, and then people that are really good at what they do, let them do that. So I would say for that, if that's your concern, if that's your pain point, then you probably should be working with an attorney regularly.
Beverly, thank you so much. Amanda, I think that was all the questions that we had in the box. And I know we're running out of time. I just can't thank you enough, Beverly. Great presentation. And to be here during the peak of tax season. So
Didn't even take my braids. I wanted to take my braids out, Maria. I need to get my hair done, but I said, well, no, I don't want to come and show up with my hair all across my head. So I got at least half of my hair out right now, but I got to get the rest of this out tomorrow.
listen, I appreciate you as always, and thank you for all the good information that you've shared. And we want to leave a little time for Sonya to come back on and close out for us. But thanks a million for this and for all the great information.
No
Sonya.
problem.
Great, great. Thank you so much again, Beverly. What a great conversation, presentation that you shared. You know, I was really impressed with those, with the great examples that you used throughout, and then the franchise example. Who would have known that you could potentially be charged in perpetuity for a mentor? So that was really, really good. Thank you for sharing that. And then, Beverly, I'm going to remember this forever about you, that you are looking at reality TV and you're identifying tax challenges, people that potentially have tax challenges when you're looking at reality TV. It tells me that everyone has a lens that they're looking through, right? Based on their specialty. So
Yeah, something we need to be paying attention to that, right? Figure these things out.
exactly. And lastly, I would just like to say, everyone, if Beverly has used her, left her contact information up, you'll also get a copy of the presentation and the recording. So we'll make sure that you have that. But thank you both, not only for a great conversation, but also for really kind of addressing, and not kind of, really addressing the questions that came through the chat. And through our Q&A box. So, you know, everyone, this is our last series. It has been great connecting with all of you throughout the 5 weeks that we've had this. We've had so much great feedback on the input, on the diversity of the various different presenters that we've had on. And so we certainly appreciate your support. I'd like to invite all of you to our annual MBE Input Committee breakfast that is occurring on April 24th from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the WMATA office in Hyattsville. This is an annual event that we put on every year. It gives our business owners an opportunity to connect with one another and also an opportunity to connect with our corporate members who support and who are seeking diverse suppliers. So please use the QR code below, or you can visit our website to register for this event. And we hope to see as many of you. It typically does fill up. So just if you are interested in attending and interested in joining us on April 24th and meeting some folks in person, please come out and join us. That's all I had for everyone. Again, thank you so much. And thank you, Beverly. You will probably, everybody remember, this is tax season from her. She told us earlier she was up since 5:30 this morning. And so it's incredibly busy. But she has been gracious enough to extend her contact information if people are interested and have any follow-up questions or interested in even seeking her services. So thank you, everyone. We will end the session. Have a great, great afternoon. And as I always say, onward and upward. Take care.